Okay, Corey, you have some questions, so go ahead.
Okay. So I'm just trying to understand, and I've heard you talk about the Noble Dharma many times, and like approached how Western Buddhism is portrayed, and I'm just trying to understand what is the is there any place with chanting and the rituals and the statues and that type of thing and the Noble Dharma? I'm just and at first glance, it seemed I'm trying to understand, well, where's its place if it has any significance.
I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
So like for example, with our practice, we're trying to focus on the eightfold noble path of waking up, make a change, and
Okay.
congratulate myself. And but in terms of like with practicing like loving kind like metta sutras and that type of thing of reciting these type of things and what place and what significance they have in our practice.
Um, there's many different ways to talk about it. I'm hoping that this is answering your question. Um, Basically, the the ordinary people, ordinary pilgrims, ordinary Buddhism is on a journey, and the noble has arrived at the journey. Okay, that's a way of looking at it. Is that we all start off because we're raised by ordinary people. I won't call them ignoble. That has a worse connotation. But we're raised by ordinary people who are not noble. And so we get into the mindset of noble, and that mindset has quite a lot of bit to it. And that interferes. And that basically the noble is the one who cleans all of that stuff back out, drops all of that baggage. Okay. Now, sometimes the baggage is useful to help us. An example of that um, would be that you sometimes would want to stand on your suitcase in order to reach something.
Mhm.
Okay. That's what's in the suitcase is irrelevant. But the fact is that sometimes we can stand on things. Now, we'll use chanting as an example of that. That chanting is started off by the ordinary. In fact, let us say the typical situation, whether it's a new monk or a Westerner visiting the Wat or anything like that, the first time someone goes to chanting, they don't like it. They don't know what's going on. Probably they don't even have a book that can be understood. That the Thai's chanting book is in Thai. Okay, there's very few or no chanting books in English, or let us say in Roman script. So even if we had such a thing, it's still a long, slow learning process. And that every day in the morning we would chant the morning chant, and every evening we chant the evening chant, and eventually, that in fact this happened to me intentionally in high school. Um, that because music stands now in an orchestra, you're not going into place, and you can have a great big stand with great big sheets of music. But in a marching band, they had tiny little stands like this with tiny little sheets of music so that you could walk around. And most of the kids are still trying to play their music from their music sheet because they haven't memorized it yet. And then do all the maneuvering and doing what the marching band is supposed to do. And it's quite frustrating. But it's a whole lot easier to watch what's going and see what's happening if you've memorized the music. And so I made a habit of always memorizing the band music and got pretty good at remembering things because that's a skill. of being able to see something and then remember it. Okay. Now, actually, memorizing sheet music and learning to play it, actually, it's not the sheet music that we actually memorize, it's the playing of the sheet music. Okay. But the point about then the chanting is that once we've gone through all of that and have memorized the chant, now we can do it nobly. We can get the benefit out of it. Okay, so that's one example of where it takes some time or skill building. And that's really the thing that takes time, is the skill building. And if we're building skills quickly, then it doesn't take very long. Not only that, but many of the skills are really, really easy. The important skill that we don't develop are those things on the Eightfold Noble Path. Okay, what is that? The skill to remember, the skill to look, to see, the skill to determine whether this is going down a rat hole or going in the right direction. Okay, we can begin to understand what dukkha is. Now, we can teach the students a whole lot about it, but they've got to figure it out for themselves. We can tell them, in fact, that when we're thinking about the past or stuff that's already happened, then that's quite possibly going to be unwholesome. If we're thinking about someplace else and somebody else in some faraway place, the likelihood is that there's going to be some dissatisfactions in there. Like if we think about London, now we want to go to London. Or if we think about London because that asshole lives in London. Okay, and so thinking about other places and other times is quite likely going to be unwholesome. We can also know for sure that thoughts of cruelty, thoughts of revenge, thoughts of getting even, thoughts of I'll show him, those are always unwholesome thoughts. Okay, well, what kind of thoughts are wholesome then? Well, the kind of thoughts that are wholesome would be thoughts of right here, right now, thoughts of success, thoughts of satisfaction, thoughts of safety and security. In fact, these kind of thoughts then will take the ordinary person into a noble state. And when we begin to practice this, we can move out of the ignoble state, which is the normal place that we all live in, into an occasionally a noble state, and then we can begin to fix it. Okay. You can also go so far as to make the equation. Now, I wouldn't say that it's specifically stated anywhere in the sutras, but it's pretty close. And that is that when the mind is in the first jhana and organized around that, the mind is noble right then and there. Okay. Why is that? Well, because for one, the number one thing is that the mind has been cleared of the hindrances. There's no more unwholesome thoughts. The thoughts are wholesome. The mind becomes integrated. All right. And so, in that regard, it's not trudging down a road all the way to the end of the road and then you arrive, but rather it's in and out. Sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. And we can begin to control that so that sometimes when we would feel like a nut, we decide not to. This is the whole quality also of nobility, is that it always is the quality of what's happening right here, right now, to where the ordinary mind has a clock. What do I mean by it has a clock? It means that it's got past and future. It's got stuff off into the future. And the ignoble is the one who is looking and hoping to become free. And the noble is right now enjoying his freedom. And all it really is the matter of an attitude change, and attitudes change back and forth really easy. You could be sitting at your own birthday party, and they bring the big cake out, and you've got presents, and everything is really, really beautiful. And then while you're trying to blow the candles out, somebody takes that cake and pushes it right in your face. Bang! You've gone from a very, very good state into an unwholesome state. Why did they do that to me? Everybody's laughing at me, etc. Right? So those things don't take long to move from one state to the next. That in fact we can open an envelope. Let us say that it's a bill, maybe from a lawyer or an accountant or a water bill or anything like that. And when we're opening it, we open it with dread because we know it's going to be a really, really high price, a very expensive thing. And then when we open and we read it and we find it's only $5. Oh, what a relief. Okay. And all we have to do is have that one little piece of information, and now our whole attitude changes. So, this going from ordinary to noble is a very, very fast thing in the mind. The Buddha says the mind is fast, O monks. It's so fast he doesn't even have an analogy for it. Well, nowadays with electronics, we do have good analogies, but back in the time of the Buddha, they didn't even know about clocks. They didn't have hours. They didn't have seconds. They didn't have tenths of a second. They didn't have milliseconds. They didn't have nanoseconds back then. And what we've come to find out is that the mind is generally someplace between 100 and about 400 microseconds, and we're not talking about certain people are only at 400 and others are down at 100, but whether the mind will work kind of in this range. Reaction times can actually be improved through skill training. Okay, race car drivers. I've got a call coming in from Robert. Is it okay that I add him to the call?
Yeah, sure.
And we'll get back to it. Hello,
Hi,
Robert.
Dhammarato.
Good to see you.
Likewise. How's it going?
Everything is fine. We're talking about right now, talking about the distinction between ordinary and noble.
Okay, cool. Can I
So
call you
you,
back when you're done?
all
Or
right?
maybe later?
Yes, that would be just fine.
Okay, great. Call you
Yeah,
back then. Thanks so much.
go shave.
All right. Thanks. Cheers. Bye.
We'll see you later.
See you later. Bye.
All right. So, just like that chanting that we were talking about and the memorization of that, there's other things that we can begin to memorize. Um, and those things we can tell ourselves during the meditation. An example would be that haiku that is so famous in Japanese Zen: "Is no place to go, nothing to do. The spring comes and the grass grows by itself." Now there's a different version of it, and that is just sitting here, no place to go. Okay, so no place to go and nothing to do. And so these kind of little short things, we can remember to say that, and then we can feel that way. We can use these as triggers. And so what I would suggest to students is to have some wholesome phrases that you've made for yourself. Everything is all right. Everything is fine. I can handle this. These are the kind of phrases that we want to have, those positive, noble phrases that we can use to help change our attitude from an unwholesome frame of reference into a noble frame of reference. That is not, oh, you got to be an ignoble and work really hard for years and years. And then, oh no, that in fact there would be times in that chanting to where the student has already memorized this part of the passage, and so he can just chant along and everything is really groovy. And then he'll get to a part of the passage where he doesn't quite, and now he'll look at the book to get to finish that. Okay, so it comes in fits and starts and stages, just like the human mind works. But basically, nobility is an attitude. Okay, and there's several words in the Pali that we can use to see that. One is the word shraddha or sada, and that means confidence, and that's a skill that has to be developed. And the way to develop confidence is with success. So by going to the chanting time after time after time, and going through the literature and memorizing it, and maybe even taking time in the day and going through that literature and learning that, brings us to the point that we can actually really enjoy sitting there with the other monks and chanting. Okay. That in fact that same thing happens exactly with choir in the Baptist church. I was in the choir, so I can see all of these similarities and whatnot like that. In fact, everything that happens in a choir happens in the chanting, except the choir is getting ready for a public performance where the monks are just chanting whether there's people around or not. But one of the things about it is that during that performance, normally if the choir is a good choir and they are all well rehearsed, then each one of the people in the choir is really enjoying that concert. Okay, so this is what we can bring about in that understanding of competence. That competence that we build is also the competence of being able to clean out the mind and get rid of the hindrances. Or what we can say is that we can keep up and stay on score, that we don't get lost in the score. That's a skill that has to be developed. In fact, that's one of the things that I kind of enjoy is to get some of the uh, a concerto or a symphony, and get the score and listen to the symphony and follow the score. I mean, it's just really enjoyable because I've got that skill already built up. For a beginner, they can't keep the score. Then, in fact, they have to wait until the computer turns the page so that they can get back on track. But by the time it's at the end of that page, they're lost again. So they got to wait for the next page. Well, guess what? When you're the one who's turning the page, you don't even know what page they're on.
Yeah.
And so learning any skill is inherently full of failures and also full of frustrations for the normal person. But when we gain those skills, now we can practice them in a noble fashion. We can actually perform those things. But we have to practice first. Here's Goenka says, when the mind wanders away from the breath, never mind, start again. Why? Because almost none of the students are capable of that never minding. That's a noble thing to do. What they normally do instead is they recognize through the rules that they have, oh, I'm supposed to be watching the breath and I'm failing. I've broken a rule. I'm a bad boy. I can't control my mind. Oh, poor me. I need help. And you can see the sewer that the mind will go down in maybe 10 or 15 seconds of bad feelings, when in fact all I had to do was just come back to the breath and start again. Okay, so look at the kind of thoughts and feelings that you have as you recognize your failures, because that's the point in time when you can take a deep breath and says, never mind, I can get around this. Never mind. Okay, so the laptop is broken. We'll find out what's wrong with it. We can get it fixed, or we can get a new one, no problem. That in fact we can do what we were going to do, The question is, how do we feel about doing it? Are we going to be frustrated and sad and angry over the loss of the mistake? Or are we going to congratulate ourselves for how well we can handle the foibles of life? That's where that shraddha comes back in, is that confidence. Okay? The confidence shows that it doesn't matter if we screw up, we'll get it. Never mind, start again, come back and do it again, over and over and over, repeat, 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 repeat. Are we going to be able to repeat happily, or do we have to repeat frustrating because we just screwed it up the last time? And so this is a do-over, right? The answer to that is whether the mind is noble or whether it's ordinary. The ordinary mind is frustrated. The noble mind is happy and content to see the screw up. So when the mind wanders away from the breath, never mind, just start again. And taking that attitude, then that shraddha or that confidence begins to come into play. That in fact the word shraddha or confidence, first off, it's translated as faith. This has nothing to do with faith. Faith is something Christians do because they're screwed up. They know they're screwed up, but they have faith someday in the future they won't be screwed up. That's faith. Okay? Confidence is, so what if I screwed up? I'll get it.
Mm.
And so this is anything but faith. This is confidence because of success. And where do we get that success? Is by cleaning out the mind, removing the hindrances time after time after time after time until we develop a skill. And that skill is these small skills that build that up, is the skill to remember, the skill to look, the skill to change, and then the skill to appreciate that change. Okay, that's the shraddha, that's the confidence that's coming in at that step 4. Or in the Eightfold Noble Path, the word that's used is samma sankappa. Now, samma sankappa actually has a lot to do with attitude or intention. Another way of talking about it is it's the frame of mind or the state of mind that we're in. Now, they talk about this in Sutta number 10 in the Sita Nupassana section, where they talk about it. Is the mind dull? Is it sharp? Is it exalted? Is it clear? Is it cloudy? But we can also use it in the sense of, is it bright and shining? Or is it dull? Can also be understood, is this the victim's mind? Or is this the winner's mind?
Okay.
Is this the top dog or the bottom dog? And we were all born as bottom dogs. We were all born dependent upon other people. And as we grow up into adulthood, we don't make that major change from I need a mommy into I will care for my mother. And a lot of us never go through that. We don't make that change. That in fact, the churches are full of people who were still looking for a mommy or a nanny they call God.
Mm.
Because we can't do it ourselves. And so really the change that happens is that change of attitude, from the change of the world's a heavy place, the world is tough, the world is hard going, into the attitude, yeah, the world is tough. Yeah, so what?
Mm. Yeah.
I can handle it.
One
Okay.
thing sorry.
So,
When I've also noticed is sometimes when I feel like when I'm practicing, I have a sensation that feels my mind sometimes starts. Oh, what's that? What's happening? And it starts to get carried away with a sensation I feel when I'm practicing that isn't the usual. Like if the mind quietens down, and I sometimes get carried away with that.
right. So when you say carried away, what that really means is that now you've decided to carry something because you care. All right. So there you are sitting fat, smart, and happy. And then something happens, a sensation, a sound, a feeling, a light, anything like that. And we become what is called distracted. Why do we get distracted? Because all of a sudden we care about it. We become curious. We want to know what it is. And if we have sati, we can say, never mind, I don't have to get distracted. Let that house burn down because I can't do anything about it. Let the fire truck do their job. I don't have to go out in the yard and stand around with the neighbors and complain, ain't it awful that that house burned down? I don't have to go. There's a term for it. It's called rubbernecking. Have you ever heard of that term?
Yes, we have it in my country. Yes.
Okay. Basically, what it's used for is the rubberneck is when somebody is driving down the road and all of a sudden they see an accident mostly. And so now they're continuing to drive down the road this way, but their neck becomes really rubber. They want to keep seeing that. If they really wanted to see it, why don't they stop?
Mm.
Okay, but they don't. So they actually are more dangerous. It's really dangerous to have an accident out on the road because everybody's looking at it and not paying attention to the road.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a distraction that's really dangerous. But we can practice not getting distracted when there's really no danger, in the sense that somebody calls it in a meditation hall. Okay, and that's actually one of the favorite complaints. I got to leave here. I can't stand this place, all of those people coughing. One person coughed on day 2, and day 6, I leave because there's too much coughing.
Yeah.
And so recognize that when we become distracted, that means that our sati is gone. There's no sati. We're not here now. We're off chasing something because we care about it. So as we practice, part of the skill then is that we don't care about so much stuff. Why do we not care? Because we can see that they're hindering us from being in a good state of mind. They take us into a terrible state of mind. Standing on the ground, on the lawn, with all of the neighbors in front of a burning house, watching the fire department people put that fire out, is not a wholesome state to be in.
Mm.
The sitting around and dealing with other people's tragedies is a very favorite thing for us to do. And so we want to know. We get really curious. We become attached or we care about things and we wind up in a lot of suffering because of it. And that's what the ordinary people do. So it only takes a noble thought. And that is, oh, I don't have to go look at that fire. I'm okay. Let those people take care of it. Now that fire that I just spoke of, that can be anything. It can be the massive bad state of the politics of the country. That fire next door can be global warming. That fire next door can be racism in my mind. Okay? And so whatever it is that we care about causes us to have to carry it. And if we stop caring about things, then that's the same thing as not carrying them around. So the noble will set stuff down. When he is noble, he will remember. Or if he doesn't remember, he's going to carry a lot of old stuff until he recognizes, wait, I don't have to carry this. I don't have to do this. I don't have to teach that guy a lesson. He's not my problem. Um, Several years ago, I had a student here. His name was Greg, and he stayed actually for about 6 months. And we developed over a course of time a phrase. that wound up working for everything. And that little phrase was not my business. NMB, not my business. Okay, Trump just lied on television. Not my business. Putin just attacked Ukraine. Not my business. Oh, the planet's getting hotter. That's not my business. What is my business? Is to sit and be happy. Let's take some wise business. Let's not make everything our business. That in fact our society teaches us to pick up and carry around a whole bunch of stuff that really is none of our business.
It's true.
And when we can remember that that's not my business, I can take a noble attitude immediately. And when I forget and I don't remember, then I'm going to be stuck in the ordinary world. And so that's why we want to develop these as skills. We want to actually memorize some wholesome stuff so we can start playing some new music rather than memorizing what we've done. One of the ways that I say it is that we have been talking ourselves into feeling bad nearly our whole lives. Now it's time to talk ourselves into feeling good. And the way that we can do that is by learning and remembering, memorizing, if you will, some wholesome things, and to do that instead. And when we're doing those wholesome things, then the mind is on the way or already in the state of being noble. And so sometimes we feel like a nut, sometimes we don't. And yet the standard way of saying it is that, ordinary life is like first grade, primary school, high school, and a bachelor's degree. And you can only be noble once you get into being a PhD candidate. That's the mentality that the Western people have, to where, no, that first grader can have moments of nobility. If it's practiced, that's the way of looking to take that clock out of it. So ordinary people have a clock to where their happiness, their joy, their freedom is way off into the future, and a clock has to tick enough for the time to become ripe. And the real point is that, no, right here, right now, you can let that clock tick to the point that it's, the alarm goes off, we remember, and now we're noble. Then, in fact, I think that's what some of the meditation apps are all about, is just keep reminding people to come back to the here now. It's like an alarm clock that goes off every 3 or 4 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
To help us remember to come back into the present moment. Well, we can get too dependent upon the clock. Then, in fact, there will be times when we're eating a cheeseburger or we're trying to pick our nose or something like that, and the alarm goes off. All the hell with that alarm. I'm too busy being unwholesome to want to be noble right now. And so what's the clock want to do for us? Okay. Then, in fact, there's an old story that Goenka tells. And that is that a wealthy guy really wanted to practice the Dhamma, but he was having trouble remembering. And so he hired a guy to walk around with him and be close to him, sort of like an aide. But this guy's job was to point out to this rich guy when he was being unwholesome, when he would be angry, when anything like that. Then this guy would say, "Oh, please, master, look at what you're doing. You're acting angry." Well, guess what? Right into it at a later time. "Oh, master, look at what you're doing. You're looking angry." "Oh, you shut up over there." So sometimes, even when we're reminded, the mind doesn't change. We have to remind ourselves. That's sort of an internal thing. And so that sati needs to be practiced. and that built right into Anapanasati Sutta. It's there to mindfully or with sati take in a long, deep breath. What it's really indicating is that we have an opportunity here to practice sati twice with each breath cycle. We practice sati on the in breath to remember that this is a long, deep breath. And we practice sati on the out breath, the long, deep breath. And we practice sati, and we practice sati, and we practice sati, and we practice sati to keep remembering. And then there are three characteristics of sati that are developed as part of the skill. One, the first one is how often does it happen? Will it come when you need it? The second quality of sati is how strong is it? Because the stronger the sati, the easier the effort to change. If you say, hot dog, I see that, then it's really easy to change it. But if our sati is kind of weak, the example that I use is when one wakes up in the morning, waking up in the morning is not the same thing as getting out of bed. Getting out of bed takes an effort. Waking up is kind of, it happened, okay? And nobody that I know of, nobody's admitted it, unless we're in boot camp or in an emergency. You know, the boot camp is 6 in the morning is when reveille happens. And so the drill instructor comes into the dormitory, into the barracks at 3 minutes to 6 with his baton. And he starts hitting things and banging and yelling and all of that kind of stuff. And the recruits have to wake up, jump out of that bed, and stand at attention immediately, right? In fact, if anybody just rolls over and doesn't want to get out of bed, the GA is going to have something to say about it, right? But mostly what happens is when we wake up, we don't get up. We wake up and we do something, and then we'll decide to get up. All right. So what we want is we want to develop the kind of sati so that when we wake up, we get up. It is dangerous to stay in this dukkha bed. And so just like Goenka says, when the mind wanders away, never mind, start again. Well, what happens is that we do wake up, but we don't get out of the bed. We still wallow in, oh, this meditation is so hard. Oh, I wish I could do it. Oh, I'm not doing it correctly. I need new instructions. Monkey mind is one of the words that's used. In fact, that term monkey mind has been around for literally more than 1,500 years. It's an old phrase, monkey mind. Okay. And the reality is that people just let the monkey mind go. They can see the monkey mind, but they let it run. That's the kind of sati that's not strong enough. When we really wake up and really see the dukkha, then the change is fairly easy to make. And so the sati, making it strong. The next one is also, the third item of it is how fast, how quick it is, because eventually or over time, we're going to be seeing things that happen in the mind very quickly that we wouldn't have caught before. That we can really begin to see how the mind functions gears by gear by gear. We can see that stuff happening almost like a slow motion camera, because it's actually the camera that's fast. So our sati needs to be fast so that we can see that quick thing that comes into the mind. Even our attitude is fairly quick. Can you see your change of attitudes? And so these are the three qualities of the sati that can be developed. And all three of them can be developed simultaneously by remembering to take a long, deep breath over and over and over again. Repeat, repeat, practice, practice, practice. It's like that little sheet music that the clarinet player has, that little thing that she's got on that stick and she's trying to do like that. But there's only one thing that's written on that sheet music. Never mind, start again. That's what we have to remember to do. Never mind, start again. But we are trained to, when we fail, is to fuss, to fight, to fume, to clean up the mess, to be unhappy, and all of that kind of stuff. But with the right noble practices, never mind. Never mind. Yeah, I yelled at that guy. I'm going to stop yelling. But the normal person, I didn't yell at him. And so we're always in a state of denial about the problems in life. But if we can gain the attitude of the noble, that, yeah, I'm a screw up and that's okay. That I can love myself anyway. I can nurture myself anyway. All right, so this is where the sati gets really strong. So the effort is not so much. In the beginning, right noble effort is quite a lot of effort. And a good working definition of right noble effort is the least amount of effort to actually get the job done. Well, what is the job? We're changing our thought. We're changing our attitude. We're changing our posture. We're changing the way that we feel. That's what we're changing. We're not trying to fix the world. We're not trying to fix GM or the royal family of this country or that country. We're not trying to fix the gold. We're not trying to fix the silver. We're not trying to fix the gun. We're not trying to fix anything because it's already okay. That stuff's not my business anyway. So there's where the noble attitude comes in, and it's temporary. It comes and goes, just like sometimes we feel like a nut, sometimes we don't. Our moods change. And sati is going to be the skill that we need is to look at that stuff. If we can't remember to look, we're not going to look. And so sati helps both the looking and the effort that it takes to change. A real wake-up call, and in fact, a really strong wake-up call, a really strong point of sati is what people often refer to in the West as insight and plug the Pali word vipassana onto it. And in fact, people can have and come out of their meditation retreat with a whole long list of deep insights, but they don't make much change. Having insights doesn't change. Having that insight or the sati to remember to see that thing over and over and over and over and over again is what gives us that confidence that we can play this thing. And so we have to practice sati over and over again, and we've got an opportunity to do that twice with each breath. Once on the in breath, once on the out breath. Let's remember to make this a long, deep, satisfying, easygoing breath. Not hard. I've had students, in fact, say, well, I can do anapanasati for quite a number of minutes and then I get really tired. Well, that means that you're working too hard. Take it easy. That you don't have to catch and remember every breath. See, every breath, every breath, every breath, every breath, I'm tired. And then we quit. It's different from this breath, I missed one. This breath, I missed one. So what? Breath, I missed one. Okay, I missed another. Never mind. Take another breath and keep going.
So,
and then in fact, oh yes, I'm tired. So what? Never mind. Start again.
So I've read a lot of some instructions they reference about counting the breath, but isn't that going to distract you, or is that's not going to necessarily help you?
Well, it can help you establish a rhythm, but Just like the guys marching, when somebody's up there, up 2, 3, 4, and then he sings this little song about you gotta go, up 2, 3, 4. The girls are down the road, the girls are down the road, up 2, 3, 4. You know, they get into these cadences, and so that idea of a cadence is quite helpful, but it's not going to do those marchers any good if the DI is saying up 2, 3, 4, and everybody's face down in the mud because they weren't watching where they were going. Okay, so and this is the situation where you're talking to. Yeah, we can get attached to that counting rather than, and it becomes its own little habit, its own. We memorize that cadence. But there's another way of looking at it, and that is that we can set the rhythm or look at our breathing in the sense of, oh, the example that I use is like box breathing. Now, we don't use box breathing. We, in fact, would practice reverse box breathing. So let me describe the difference. Box breathing was developed for the Navy SEALs. And by doing this box breathing, they've actually increased the number of successes of those that go through the training. That in fact, the whole point is that they don't want to change the training. The training is excellent, but only about 20% of the people who go through the training go all the way through it and pass. We want to keep the standards at the high, but we want the success rate to go up. And so what they did was they started to have the SEALs to focus on their breathing. Okay, so you can imagine there that this guy's got his rifle above his head. He's got to have it above his head because if he brings it down to chest level, it's underwater because he's up to his neck in the swamps of South Carolina. This is what we're talking about. It's not Fort Bragg. It's there's several of them. Quantico is the one, but there's another one in South Carolina where they really put the troops in the swamp. And they have to stand there in the swamp all night long with that gun above their head, waiting for the dawn for the attack. Right? Wow. And they train them that way. And that's why so many of them flunk out. But what did they train them to do? Is to breathe. And so the box breathing is 4 counts on an in breath to start to slow the breath down. Then you hold that breath for a count of 2, and then you exhale on the count of 4, and then you breathe in on the count of 4 again, hold it for 2, and then exhale again. So it would be something like this. I had to give you an example of it. Is now you can actually get fairly lightheaded. You can get very energized with this. That is different than what we're practicing, because you can imagine that these guys in that cold water for hours and standing there, that they need that extra kick of the energy by holding that in breath and having that oxygen actually entering the body and then moving it out and then bringing new air in, holding it for the count of 2. The reverse breath, or the reverse box breathing, would be 4 on the in, go immediately then to 4 on the out, and at the end of the out breath is when we hold it for a while. And then we breathe in again, 1, 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4, hold. In 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4, hold. In 2, 3, 4. Okay, so what that does is that it's more conducive to purification of the blood rather than merely energizing it. Why? Because that holding it out like that is where the things come to a rest on the inside. And so by throwing all of that stuff out and then leaving it empty for a while, gets it all loosened up, and then the next breath, and then on the next out breath, that throws even more carbon dioxide and pollutions out.
Mm.
Now, as we practice more and more, we can go to higher rates. Let us say 552. Now, 552, Keyshawn is calling. Let me bring him in on the call. I know that he's doing something really short. Hello, Keyshawn. I'm on a call, but I know that you're busy. Can we talk later? Keyshawn. Okay, never mind. So what we then do with that 442 is begin to make it even longer. For instance, the 442, if we look at the counting as 1 second for each count, then 442 is up to 10. That means that we've already gotten the breath down to 6 breaths a minute.
Mm.
If we go then to 552, that's 12, which means now we're down to 5 breaths a minute. And then if we go to, in fact, the longest one that I would ever recommend is an 884. What is the 884? Well, 8 plus 8 is 16, plus 4 is 20. Now we're down to 3 breaths a minute.
Yeah, that's intense.
No, it's really relaxing. Very slow, easy breathing, but it's not forced. It's not intense. That's the whole thing. The students, when they're practicing this, instead of staying at the 442, which would be good for quite a while, and as they relax, they can make it longer. And so I would never want students to think of the 884 as a goal. It's not a goal. If it's a goal, it becomes intense, and then that's dukkha.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so it's not intense at all, then in fact it's just very, very relaxed. That's the reason for counting the breathing. Okay, another reason, a way of counting, instead of counting inside the breath, we count outside of the breathing in the sense of one inhale and exhale is 1, the next inhale and exhale is 2, the next inhale and exhale is 3. And the question is, can the student get to 10 before his mind wanders away?
Mm.
And then if the mind wanders away, never mind, start again. This breath is 1, the next breath is 2, etc., like that. And so these are little toys or mechanisms to help us pay attention to the breathing. And these are the kind of thoughts that we're having about the breathing, is thoughts about the breathing, the thoughts of its rate, the thoughts of its depth, the thoughts about its value and utility. Like, oh, that feels so good. To fill up and just be so full of air and then and let it out, and it feels so good and so relaxing. I mean, here people are adults now. They have been living, breathing animals their whole lives and never pay attention to the one thing that they need the most.
Mm.
Okay? A kind of a little point to make here. I'm not going to take too long at it, though sometimes I spend quite a lot of time at it. And that is that if you die, what's important after you're dead?
Not much, you did.
Right. When you're dead, there's nothing important. So the only really important thing is being alive.
Mm.
But if being alive is the only important thing, why do we go around making all this other stuff important where in fact it's not? Most of it is just not even my business, but I make it important. I make it my business.
Mm.
Okay. So if we can in fact recognize that the only really important thing is being alive, then the only thing that's important then is keeping you alive or being alive. And what is it that's keeping you alive? I mean, how many years can people go without sex? How many years can or months can people? I mean, people can go for 30 days without eating food. We go 3 or 4 or 5 days without drinking any water. How long can you go without breathing?
Yeah.
So we can say that you've got a death sentence. You're going to die within the next 3 minutes. Guaranteed you're going to die. Unless you do something, you take a reprieve. You get a new breath. The new breath is going to keep you alive. Why is it that we don't appreciate this life-giving breathing that we're doing? This is what the old ancients were all about. They didn't understand air. They didn't know oxygen and carbon dioxide. They didn't know barometric pressure. They didn't know relative humidity. They didn't know any of that kind of stuff. But they knew that it was life-giving. And so this is what we need to go back to, is to stop with our intellectual stuff that we learned in the fourth and the fifth grades about the air, and start appreciating it directly, that this breath. Okay. And with that, we can even work with the quality of the air. That in fact, that's one of the reasons why I'm living on Koh Phangan. The island is so far out of first off, it's a long way from the mainland. And secondly, the mainland that is close to, there's no industries. There's no oil refineries. There's no power stations. The closest power station is down in the Point Street Dhammarato, which is a good 300 kilometers from here.
Wow.
And all the air that we get is right off of the ocean. Okay, and so I really appreciate the air here. The island air, that's the really best air that you can have. New York, not so much.
No.
And while people get sick with that kind of air and have all kinds of respiratory problems, they're still not paying attention to it. The Thais are much more into that than, in fact, during the years when Bangkok had gotten enough traffic back in the early 90s, that the police started wearing what we would refer to as the COVID mask for their breathing. Because you don't want to be out in that air where all of the trucks and traffic and all of that kind of stuff is. And so it was quite remarkable that any of the pictures back in those days, all of the cops in Bangkok that were out on the streets, they were wearing face masks.
Oh.
And a lot of other people started to, because it's just more healthy to breathe city air if you can filter it a little bit. But the best thing to do is to get out of the cities so that you can get some good fresh air, because it's important. It keeps you alive. And the lungs will get full of all of that kind of stuff. That in fact, people who worked in the coal mine in the old days would catch something called black lung disease, because all the air that they were breathing had a lot of coal dust, and it would get stuck into the lungs. And they weren't doing any breathing exercises to purge that stuff out. Anapanasati breathing, in fact, the kind of breathing that we're doing will, in fact, purge that stuff out. We cough it up, we get it wet, we cough it up, throw it out, take deep breaths, and make sure that the lung system is cleaned out, because it's important. Sorry to go off on all of this, but back to the point is that we need that breath. Why don't we appreciate it more? And here with Anapanasati is the perfect opportunity to be here now with our breathing and being alive, and recognizing how valuable, how wonderful, how marvelous it is that I'm sitting here alive. That some object here, like this thing, is not alive. It has no life to it. It has a mechanism. It'll open and close. It'll catch like that, but it's not alive. That life is something quite unique, and we don't appreciate it enough. And so with Anapanasati, using that breath, that life energy, and being with that is a very noble state to be in.
I may have to come and visit you, Dhammarato, and have some of that air of yours.
You can have all of it you want. There's plenty to go around. So I assume that this has gotten answered the question more than needed, even about the distinction between the ordinary person. We all start off ordinary. We are born ordinary. The question is can we start to practice to have moments of being in a state of nobility, to have the mind fresh and clean and pure, rather than the pollutions of all the past that we've had. And it's, like I said, it's not way off into the future when some magical clock rings and then we can feel happy. No, you feel happy right now if you can remember to throw all your unhappiness out and be happy right here, right now. That's the noble. That in fact, that phrase, ain't my business, not my business, none of my business, that actually means that we're coming out of it, that we're above it now, that work to do, global warming, politics, and all of that, we're above that. This is what the word lokatara means, above the world. And we translate that to the word supramundane. And an easy example would be, the story is that every one of us, every single human being is an emperor of our own pile of dirt. But most people are buried under their own pile of dirt. And quite a number of people, especially Buddhists, they're trying to claw their way out of their pile of dirt. But those who have the right noble attitude, we just sit on top of it. We're on top of the world. That's what the supramundane or lokatara actually means, is being on top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the world. Okay. That's the noble. And again, it's an attitude. Struggling to get out of it is an attitude. Buried under it is an attitude.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's very, very helpful.
Good. So you have another question?
No, you've covered it all there, Dhammarato. That covered everything.
Very good. Well, never mind. Start again.
I will do that.
Repeat, over and over and over and over again.
I will. Thank you very much, Dhammarato.
Excellent. All right, Corey. Well, we'll see you soon.
Will do. All right. Thank you.
Enjoy your practice.